if you ever walk this area and you see a hand crawling along the ground, over 40 animals died. So they were kind of doing battle in a sense with the king. Gives you a spring in your step. And the servant promptly shot himself. Well, good morning. It's started off a lovely bright day in Dorset today, and we are out on another walk. And you will have seen from my early footage that we started off in a little village called Tarrant Gunville. Tell you more about Tarrant Gunville as we walk, yeah, we're going to start off the walk in the village, walk through the village, and then we're going to head off cross country. But I think before we get going, I'm just going to go inside the church and have a quick look around that, and then I will tell you more about the walk as we go. But it's got a lot of interesting stuff in it, including stories of bloody battles, amongst lots of other things. But the big thing that I'm looking forward to is lunchtime, because this is going to be no sandwich on a wet log. I've actually ordered a wonderful pie, because I'm heading for somewhere which is famous for its award-winning pies. So I have ordered already ahead a steak and Stilton pie for my lunch. I wonder where that can be. You might know if you know the area. Anyway, we'll catch up more in a minute and I will tell you more about it. But let's go in and have a quick look round the church before we get going. So this is the Church of St Mary, Tarrant Gunville. Kind of circa 14th, 15th century, although it's built on the site of an earlier church that dated back to 1100. But it's a church, like a lot of Dorset churches, that's had quite a lot of rebuilding over the years. So it's kind of changed a bit. So that was just a quick glance around this lovely church, typical English village church. Now we're going to head off, well, up through the village initially. So, Tarrant Gunville is a village in the Tarrant Valley. The River Tarrant rises at Stubhampton Bottom. It's not that far from here. It drains eventually into the Stour at Spetsbury, but it gives its name to 8 villages. One of those is Tarrant Gunville, which is this village that I'm walking through now. Gets its name from, or Tarrant comes from, it's thought anyway, to come from an Old English word which means trespasser, and that is thought to refer to the fact that the River Tarrant has a habit of flooding at some seasons and potentially nearly drying up at others. Hence they call it Tarrant. Gunville comes from an ex or previous lord of the manor, which was de Gunville. So he owned all of this land, and it takes his name, hence Tarrant Gunville. So 2 famous inhabitants at least. The Wedgwood family lived here, both Josiah Wedgwood and Thomas Wedgwood. They both lived in Tarrant Gunville at one time, in 2 manor houses in fact. One lived at Gunville House, the other lived at a mansion that we will be coming across later on. And obviously they are famous for their pottery. I think this is another lovely Dorset village. It's kind of classic Dorset village, I guess. Certainly quite quiet, which I'm a little bit surprised at. I don't know if this road is always this quiet, but very pleasant walking through the village. You'll all know that I enjoy walking through villages and looking at the cottages and gardens and so on. In fact, we reached Stubhampton village by the looks, although Stubhampton Bottom goes further than that. Well, this is interesting here because that is very full and very wet road. It's obviously been flooded. Anyway, we are heading away from the village now. This road will take us eventually cross country in a minute. Wow, that's interesting. There's a brimstone butterfly fluttering about, and this is mid-January. And it's a lovely day, as you can see. The sun is still with us. I do think, I mean, virtually the whole of the country, I think, has cloud, and I think it's probably coming here as well later today. At the moment, I'm thankful for a lovely bit of sunshine, and that's a real spring boost, I always think, to see a lovely brimstone fluttering about, because they kind of, I don't know, yellowy colour, I suppose, is a kind of spring colour, isn't it? So anything that colour kind of makes me think of spring, to be honest. So we are off-road now. This is a path I've walked quite a few times over the years, and I always enjoy it. We're gradually climbing, getting some views behind us. So I still haven't talked about the route today. Did you get the clue I gave? Pies. A place in Dorset that's famous for its pies. Award-winning pies. Well, I'll tell you. I'm heading for, well, Chettle is the place with the pies. Chettle Village stores, which was once housed in basically a corrugated tin hut. They've moved since. Don't think I've actually been there since they've been in the new premises, but I've already rang ahead because they are very popular, and I have made the mistake of not ringing ahead in the past and get there and ask for my favourite steak and Stilton pie, only to find that they've got none, they've sold out. So now, at their suggestion, I ring ahead. So I have a steak and Stilton pie put aside for me for lunchtime, and they do coffee as well, so I'll be able to have a coffee with it. So that's where I'm heading for. That'll be probably 2/3 into the walk, because the route I'm taking, I'm heading across to Farnham first of all, Farnham, Dorset, and then on to Chettle, and then back to Tarrant Gunville. But there's lots to see on the way. So it's a lovely warm day, I would say warm day today. It's been, last few walks, it's been quite cold. Ooh. Is that a partridge? I couldn't see. Yeah, it's been quite cold, but today feels warm, and according to my thermometer, it's something like 15-16 degrees. Admitted that's in the sun, probably in the shade it's cooler, but this is a lovely warm sun. And one of the good things about this walk, which is partly why I kind of come this way this time of the year, is, as you can see, we've got reasonable paths to walk on, because obviously there's quite a lot of mud around in January habitually these days, but this is not too bad, fairly solid. You can hear buzzards up there wheeling around, making their typical buzzard noises. There's actually 3 of them. Hunting for prey. And that's something which will be a feature of today. Hunting. But more about that to come, as we're heading to a really interesting place. That's interesting. Bussey's Stool Farm. What Bussey's Stool is. It's not a name that's familiar with me. I wonder where that comes from. I'll have to look that up later, see if I can find anything out about it. So we're coming up to one of the interesting areas on this walk, and it's an area with a very strange name. This is called Bloody Shard Gate. Now you could be forgiven for thinking that somebody cut their hand maybe on a shard of glass by the gate. But that is not it at all. But it is a very unusual name, isn't it? Bloody Shard Gate. But I'll tell you the story about how it got its name in just a moment. In fact, it doesn't actually relate to a gate, it relates to the area. Although there used to be a nice gate here. It's gone now, look, they've replaced it with a metal one. But there used to be a very nice wooden gate at the entrance to these woods. We're not going down there anyway, but I'm going to stop here temporarily for some 11s. A cup of Bovril, a stack of logs here. I think that might do as a table for me. Cheers. 11s, although it's probably nearly 12s, I suspect, but never mind. Better late than never. Ah, it's awesome. So, Bloody Shard Gate. Where does it get its name from? Well, it stems back to the 18th century, I believe, and a skirmish that took place here between gamekeepers and poachers. So leading up to that point, obviously we had individual gamekeepers, we had individual poachers, but gradually the poachers had been kind of forming into bands, I guess. So the gamekeepers likewise were doing the same thing in order to counter that move. And as would be expected, the whole thing culminated in some battles between bands of gamekeepers and bands of poachers. And one took place here in the 18th century. So that battle, the gamekeepers actually won, but one of the stories that's told from that is that during the battle, one of the poachers had his hand and lower arm severed. The poacher recovered. He was taken off, I think, to hospital and recovered. His hand was buried at Cranborne churchyard, and it is said that if you walk this area, you will find, especially at night of course, that severed hand crawling along the ground, searching for its owner. So that's the story that's told. So if you ever walk this area and you see a hand crawling along the ground, you'll know where it's come from. The poacher actually recovered. I think they were actually sentenced to be deported, but because of their injuries, I think that was kind of commuted to prison in this country. Ultimately, I understand that the poacher that lost his hand, actually moved to London and opened up a shop in London. And guess what he sold? He sold game. So he appeared to have made a success of his life. And for that, you have to hand it to him, I'd say. Cheers. So this wonderfully peaceful area known as Bloody Shard Gate was once the scene of a major battle between gamekeepers and poachers. But you wouldn't know it, would you, from now? It's such a nice area. And a nice pile of logs for my picnic. And somewhat appropriately, I've got blood on my hands as well. But that's less to do with gamekeepers and poachers and more to do with the fact that I was clumsy around brambles just now. And this is another of those paths that I actually love to walk. I really like this little tunnel path, and it's appropriate, if you like, for this walk, because this is quite a big hazel coppicing area historically, and obviously, as you can see, this is a old hazel coppice. Could almost cut myself a new walking pole. So this is an area that's kind of known, I think, a bit for battles and skirmishes. Obviously the English Civil War, that would have affected this area. Already heard about gamekeepers and poachers doing battle in this area. There's even a story told about 2 packs of local dogs doing battle, apparently. And in this battle, I think over 40 animals died, apparently. So I read. That must have been some battle. It is, of course, prime hunting territory, because we are in the heart of Cranborne Chase. And I always think, as you walk down these grassy paths here, which is a lovely part of the walk, I have to say, you can just imagine King John and his men riding up through here hunting deer. And that's another battle that took place in some ways. It was a battle between farmers and royalty. The deer were, of course, for hundreds of years a protected species, and there are even deer parks around here to protect them and breed them, purely for the pleasure of the king to come and hunt them. Well, of course, the farmers didn't like that, because deer, when there were so many of them, actually damaged their crops. So they were kind of complaining and doing battle, in a sense, with the king over that. It's a battle that they eventually won, kind of, because ultimately the protection on deer was lifted, and I suspect it had rather more to do with the fact that hunting was going out of fashion than that the king kind of gave in to the wishes of the farmers and locals. Anyway, it was lifted, and it said that when that ban was lifted, 12,000 deers were killed by locals by villagers and so on in 2 days. So you can imagine that. I mean, I don't know, you read these things and sometimes you wonder, is that true, is that embellished? Anyway, that's what I've read. That's all I can say. But imagine killing a deer while there was this protection order on them. You're effectively killing a deer that the king was going to hunt and kill. Well, you wouldn't want to do that. Anyway, so that's another story of this area. And this is such a great place to walk. Look at it, that's a lovely grassy path. You can hear the stillness. The only sound I can hear, apart from my voice, is the sound of corvids in the woods. Rooks and crows cawing. It is absolutely beautiful. And it is such a good walk. And, I might add, it is still a glorious day. The cloud hasn't come, so I am really pleased with that. Wonderful. I am loving it. It's a shame we have to have so many metal gates, I have to say. I mean, I am a fan of gates over stiles, of course, at my age, because I can no longer leap over stiles like I once could. But it's a shame they have to be metal. I really like the old wooden gates, because I've got a definite affinity with wood. Hence why I like carrying my wooden walking pole rather than the collapsible hiking poles that you get. I just like wood and the feel of wood. Definitely should have been a carpenter or a woodsman. Oh, there's two planes up there side by side, both going in the same direction. Caught by the sun. So something that always intrigues me when I'm out walking these farmlands, and that is, how do they manage to get their crops to grow in soil which is very stony, which this is here. I've seen a lot worse than this, mind you, but they seem to grow crops. I've got relatively good soil, I'd say, in my garden. But should I decide to plant something, which usually I leave it wild, as you know, I'm a wild gardener. But should I decide to plant something, I have a job to get it to kind of grow somehow. And I've got good soil. They have this stony soil, and stuff grows. Now, I know there's a lot of scientific research goes into crops, and they are kind of modified, I guess, to cope with bad conditions and drought and this sort of thing, so they'll grow in those conditions. So maybe it's that entirely, I don't know. But this is another of those big fields, isn't it, which we see all the time. Such a shame to see the lack of hedgerows. Because I do like a good hedgerow. This is absolutely amazing today. Absolutely fantastic. It's like spring. Feels really warm in the sun. And I haven't got a coat on either. It's just, and it's so... Oh, there's another butterfly. But if I stop, there's absolutely no noise. There's no wind. It's balmy. And it's warm. Ah, it's a pleasure to be out. And it just makes me think of spring. And it's only mid-January. We've got a long way to go before spring comes, really, but makes you kind of think of spring. Gives you a spring in your step. That's some nice views. They may not be high hill top views, but some lovely views all around. So we've now reached Newtown, another new town, and another hamlet where the namers had no thought for the future, because clearly it is not new. So I hereby rename this Not So New Town. This is actually the edge of it. There's much more of it behind, but we're not going that way. We are in fact going over this way. So we are heading for Farnham, and this is Farnham, Dorset, not the other Farnham. But there may even be more than that, is there? I definitely haven't walked as far as the other Farnham, not today. So this is Farnham, Dorset, which we are about to join and walk through the village to head out the other side for my lunch. And my prediction, or the forecaster's prediction, is it, appears to have come true, because there's a great big bank of cloud obscuring the sun now. Never mind, I've been blessed with a wonderful morning. Ah, well, this is positive, I guess. It is metal, but it is, oh, at least a gate. Seem to remember it was a stile at one time. So we're going to go down to the main street. There's some lovely cottages here. This one's nice here, look, it used to be a Wesleyan chapel. built 1865. It's now converted. This is the main street with lots of cottages. And I feel feng shui challenged by these, especially these here. Not that I believe in feng shui, but I do, because these cottages are all built side on to the road. Now, we are used to seeing houses being built facing out onto the road. It's the way it's always done, but these aren't. They are side on, and it doesn't look right. So I wondered about this and why it was like it, when traditional way is to face the front of the cottage out onto the road. And I think it is because back in the day these were built, there was no such thing as central heating. So heating was difficult. They had obviously open fires, but because the cottages were cold and damp, I think they were built to capture as much sun as possible. And that's why they built them this way. I don't know whether that's right. Somebody suggested that to me, but actually thinking about it, the cottages would block each other, wouldn't they? They not block the sun from each other. So I don't know. Plus the fact that the windows are quite small, let's be honest. Or maybe it's the morning sun they wanted. I don't know. Just seems odd that that's the way they're built. But it's a lovely village with some really lovely cottages. Picture postcard perfect, as I've said before in my walks, and I always enjoy walking down through here. So Farnham, where does that get its name? Well, apparently it comes from two Old English words, one meaning fern and the other meaning homestead. So essentially it overall, I think, means meadow where ferns grow, apparently. And it was originally 5 separate settlements that have all amalgamated into one village. And its most famous inhabitant was Augustus Pitt Rivers, and he had a museum. The Pitt Rivers Museum famously was based at Farnham. Seem to remember I went there as a kid. Don't remember anything about it, but I was born in '48. The Pitt Rivers Museum closed in 1970, and was the collection was dispersed to various places. So I probably would have been able to come here as a child. I just don't remember anything about it. But the Pitt Rivers Museum kind of remains with the name of the pub, which is called the Museum. And I have been in there before for a lunchtime pint, but not today. And it's a busy place. There's loads of cars all over the place. I don't know if they're all in the pub or whether there's something else going on here. But yeah, well, the pub car park is quite full. Wow. So I'm not really lingering at Farnham. Just going to walk through and head on to Chettle. Maybe we will just take a little detour up here, have a skim around the church. Don't know if it'll be open. Open. Another church with its nativity still up. Rather unusual west window. I don't know why it's that shape. Presumably something was there, a statue maybe? Well, that was a whistle-stop tour of Farnham Church. Well, well. Oh dear. Actually, there is no well. Maybe he's not well. Interesting on the roof up there. This is interesting. Look, Hill House Halt. You might think that's a nod to a railway, old railway, but it isn't. There was never any railway here, I don't think. Just think the person who put that up was a enthusiast. So that was Farnham. Way busier than I remember it, so I can only think that there's something going on. I don't think I've ever seen it have quite so many cars around. Anyway, we are leaving that now. Please clean up after your dogs. I don't have one. Now, I seem to remember there used to be some alpacas down here. I wonder if they're still there. Yeah, still here. The other side of the field. So we are en route to lunch now. Oh, sorry, we're en route to Chettle now. But Chettle is synonymous with lunch. And I was getting a bit concerned because I gave them a time of between 1 and 2. But it's now gone, 2 o'clock in fact. So I just phoned ahead and it's still there. I don't know how long they keep these pies for before they sell them. So I just wanted to make sure. Anyway, so this the route we're doing today is part of a longer route of mine, a regular route I'd say over the years, but it's quite difficult to kind of do, what would it have been, 16 miles probably, the original route. And it's quite difficult to do that at this time of the year with the short daylight hours, I think, without kind of having to rush it, which obviously I don't like to do when I'm filming. So I shortened it. So this one will be probably 8 or 9 miles, I think, in total. There's another reason I shortened it as well, and that's because the original route I parked in a rough lay-by in the middle of nowhere. And I don't like doing that now, since my car was broken into once in a sort of situation like that. I kind of try to park in a village or somewhere where there's more traffic around. So hence that's another reason for changing the route a bit as well. So Chettle is not only on some of my regular walking routes, it's also on my regular, well, historically regular cycling routes as well. And Chettle Stores is just absolute perfect place to stop when you're out on a bike, because it's on a country lane, tiny kind of what I call working village. It's not a touristy village at all, it's a working village. And as I say, the village shop was just a corrugated tin hut outside, some grassy areas with some picnic tables, chickens running around, and you sit there and eat these pies, and it's absolutely idyllic. I'm really hoping that the new, now that it's moved into, I think, farm premises or something, I've not been here since it's moved. I'm hoping it's not lost any of its charm, because it was a really lovely place to stop. And the pies, they are second to none, especially the steak and Stilton. Have I bigged them up enough to encourage you to come out here? Anyway, the village is just down here, so it's not too far now. So now I'm just dropping down into Chettle. So there's a couple of theories about where Chettle gets its name from. One is that it comes from an Old English word, Chettle, which means a deep valley between hills. The other one is another Old English word, Chettle, which means cattle. It is recorded at one point as Coetel, that's C-O-E-T-E-L, which means a valley. And the original village shop, oh, it's still there. So that's the original village shop. A tin hut. It's now moved over the road, I think. At one time, I should say, the whole village was owned by the Bourne family. Lock, stock and barrel. Wow, that's a pretty good playground over there. The new village shop is just down here. In fact, I can see it. Chettle Village Stores. And it's got a barn behind with tables and chairs in it. So let's go get food. Right. This is the shop. They look nice. And I had room in my rucksack. Right, let's go find a seat. It's so mild, I've decided to sit outside. This is awesome. This steak and Stilton. Absolutely lovely. Well, that was absolutely delicious. Let me just take you on a quick tour around the facilities. I'm so glad they're rustic. I mean, it's a shame because there's quite a lot of birds around here, even on the furniture, but I'm so pleased that they've kept it rustic when they've kind of extended and moved across here. Absolutely awesome. And the pie was as delicious as I remember it. But we've got more walking to do, so I can't sit there any longer. As lovely as it is, and I'm so glad it's milder today because it would have been quite cold there otherwise. I've got to head back this way and head out of town. So that literally turned out to be a lunch hour, that did, I think. Which I would normally do. Does mean that the light is fading, but the reason was that I got talking to a couple who were walking this area with their dog, and we were kind of talking for quite a long time about walks. So I will just try the church. I don't think it'll be open because whenever I've come here in the past, the church has been locked. Ooh. It's actually open. I hadn't expected that. It was just a very quick in and out because there's just not enough light to film sensibly in there. The other feature of Chettle is over here, and this is Chettle House, a red brick Baroque mansion built in Queen Anne's reign, and I really like Chettle House. Pevsner, the historian, summarised it as being the plum of Dorset houses, and it is really nice. Not so much from this angle, really need to see it from the front, but it's private now, you can't go in it. But I've been around it, and used to be able to go in it, but it was split up into flats at one stage, I think. And then since then I think it's been bought and turned into a private house, as far as I know, not open to the public. Taking a little detour. Wonder if I can get a view of it from down here. Because it is a footpath. It's a nice path as well. Now we can see it. In some ways I wish I was walking this way. Rather attractive path. Unfortunately I'm not. We can get a view of the house from here though. I think it's quite attractive, I think. I'm with Pevsner. I think it's a really attractive house in that style that it's been built in. Now this has changed quite a lot since I was here last, because this used to be a caravan cum motorhome park, but there's no sign of it now, so it's been kind of restored to farming by the looks. I don't know if that's because I don't know if it's part of the Chettle House grounds. And maybe the new owners, and I'd say new, but it's probably been some years, but maybe they've taken it back, I don't know. But I must admit, it looks nicer as it is, and it's a very pleasant place to walk. It is a shame that this anticyclonic gloom, as they call it, has settled over us again, because it does mean we'll lose the light quite early again today. But can't complain anyway, can I? I've had a lot of sunshine today, almost like spring, so I'm a happy man. Some amazing fungi on that log. Let's see these big ones on the top. I have to look up what they are. I can't get to it because there's a fence in the way, but I might be able to look that up later on. It's a nice rural scene now, without caravans. There's also some logging going on over there in the woodlands. And look at this amazing tree. That is mega. An older statesman of the woods, that is. Phenomenal. So as you can see, I'm currently on the Jubilee Trail. It's one of our long distance paths, I guess you'd call it. Still hear the chainsaws going. It's a kind of autumn sound to me. Autumn come winter sound. Chainsaws. I don't know why I associate it with autumn and winter, but I guess it's because it's non-growing season, so maybe that's when a lot of this work is done. But I have this kind of image in mind of chainsaws, gloomy grey weather, and the crackling of a bonfire, and probably the cawing of corvids, rooks and crows. Not that there are any of those here at the moment, you know what I mean? It's kind of, it just speaks of autumn somehow. Well, and winter. That would be an awesome place to stay. Shepherd's hut on a trailer with a gate into the woods and a little pond. Now, how cool would that be? And I've just spotted this nearby. What could that be? There's a shepherd's hut is over there. Any ideas? Put a comment up if you know what that is. I can't see anything from this side. Could be a, is it an owl box or something? Nesting box? I don't know. I would be really interested to know what that is. So right out of the woods now. That was an absolutely awesome bit of walking, that was, through those woods. Really nice. But we're out on the open now. And some nice views around, even if it is a dull afternoon. And the chainsaws are even nearer now. They're across the other side of these woodlands somewhere. This is interesting. In the middle of nowhere. Somebody has put a picnic bench. It's on the Jubilee Trail, so maybe it's something to do with that. In fact, maybe it's to do with what's behind it, because I believe this is Chettle Long Barrow. So maybe it's to do with that. And it is quite a long barrow, quite a long barrow. And here's a turning you could easily miss. Fortunately, I know about it. There's actually quite a few barrows around here, because I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 round barrows in that field. That's clearly some very ancient footpaths and trails that I'm walking on. We're actually on the last leg now. This will lead me back to Tarrant Gunville fairly soon. But we've got yet another interesting thing to take in before we get there. An interesting story, which I will tell you in a moment. Interesting after our story earlier on. So it's fairly obvious that this is parkland. So the final interesting thing on this route is actually over there. It's actually Eastbury House, which is, well, was a very substantial manor house built in the 18th century. So this was an absolutely palatial mansion, said to be the biggest in Dorset at the time, and the problem was the size was its downfall, because the owner moved to Italy and tried to find a tenant for the house, but nobody wanted it. Even the offer of to pay a tenant £200 a year to live here, which was a substantial sum in those days, even that didn't attract any takers. So in the end, he'd left a servant in charge of the house. So in the end, from Italy, he sent instructions to his servant to demolish one of the wings, because it was falling into disrepair, I believe. Apparently, the servant, seeing a chance to make some money for himself, actually demolished the main house as well as the wing, and he sold the stone which was used on various buildings in this area. Now, he didn't think the owner was actually going to return to England, but the owner did decide to come back. So he sent word to the servant to say that he was coming home, and the servant promptly shot himself. So that is the story of Eastbury House. So what was left was still substantial, but it is essentially the stable block, really, which is still a mansion and was one of the mansions occupied by the Wedgwood family in their day. So that is apparently a true story. So the servant, thinking he was going to feather his own nest and make himself a fortune in his owner's absence, wound up committing suicide when he realised he was going to be found out. Oh, I do like these stories about Dorset folk. So on that happy note, I'm going to sign the video off. The light has almost gone. I'm using my iPhone torch again just to light me to do the sign off. Well, it's been a fantastic day, absolutely amazing. I had some glorious sunshine this morning, spring weather, butterflies amongst other things in January, balmy, still. It's been fantastic. All right, it's clouded over this afternoon and been more wintry, but I have no complaints. So much of interest on this walk. It really is an amazing walk, and if you're lucky, you can get a pie thrown in for lunch as well. Icing on the cake. Oh, that was funny. I didn't realise there was somebody else coming down the track listening to me doing my sign off. Anyway, I'm back now. So yes, phenomenal day. Absolutely fantastic. I just can't find words to describe today. It's been amazing. Awesome, in fact. So thanks so much for coming with me again. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've absolutely loved it, as I say, and as always, of course. But for now, this is me, the Dorset Rambler, saying until next time. And thanks so much for coming with me.